It transports almost 100 times more water than the rivers of the world combined. The Gulf Stream. As part of a network of ocean currents that span the world, the Gulf Stream brings warmth from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the outer edges of northern Europe. It follows the eastern coastline of the United States until turning to cross the Atlantic Ocean at Newfoundland, Canada. Along the way, it brings bountiful catches to fishermen on both sides of the Atlantic and delight to gardeners, from France to Great Britain and all the way up to the Arctic Circle. Ever more oceanographers, physicists and marine biologists are turning their attention to the ocean current. How is the Gulf Stream being affected by global warming? Is it becoming weaker? And to what effect? The Azores, a group of volcanic islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, fertile and with mild temperatures all year round. The harbour town of Horta on Fayal Island is home to an institute of oceanography and fish studies. The researchers are on the way to Condor Seamount, a nearly 2-kilometer high undersea mountain. Its summit lies 185 meters below sea level.
O monte submarino tem sempre condições um pouco piores do que perto da costa, porque as ondas são maiores e um pouco trocadas. Está um bocado de vento, mas vamos ver se conseguimos trabalhar.
The marine biologists are looking for a rare deep-sea fish that comes to the Azores by way of the Gulf Stream. After it leaves the east coast of North America, in the middle of the Atlantic, the Gulf Stream splits. One branch, the North Atlantic Drift, flows towards Europe. Part of its waters turn to the south and pass the Azores. The seas around the Portuguese outpost are among the richest in the world. 500 fish species are known here, including the Atlantic wreckfish, which can become 2 meters long. Not all that much more is known about the fish.
Ou seja, a ideia é ver se os chernes juvenis que vêm com a corrente do Golfo, não é? Com o Gulf Stream, quando afundam nos montes submarinos dos Açores, se depois residem nos montes submarinos dos Açores, não é? Se ficam aqui para crescer e tornar-se adultos. É isso que nós queremos fazer, então precisamos da ajuda de pescadores experimentados, porque nós pescamos, mas eles são muito melhores pescadores do que nós, não é?
The men meet up out on the open water. A small surgical operation is planned. The necessary equipment is quickly transferred. The only thing still needed, the fish itself. Wreckfish live deep down on the floor of the ocean, so the fishing lines are several hundred meters long.
A corrente do Golfo influencia, diria, toda a vida nas ilhas dos Açores, através do impacto que tem no clima, na circulação oceânica, e este ciclo de vida do cherne é um bom exemplo. Pensa-se que existe um local de reprodução, que será no oeste do Atlântico, na costa dos Estados Unidos. Os chernes juvenis têm uma fase pelágica, ou seja, eles andam à deriva no oceano, normalmente associados a algas, plástico ou madeira ou algum objeto flutuante.
Fisherman José can feel it on the line when a wreckfish bites. He has to reel it in very slowly.
Vai demorar pouco mais porque nós queremos que o peixe chegue em boas condições.
O peixe, quando está lá embaixo, é diferente quando chega cá em cima, com a pressão e com a força dele a fazer e a gente, e com a pressão da água, os olhos saem fora.
Exatamente, por causa da pressão, para não...
Quanto mais pressa tiver...
A young wreckfish, just what the biologists wanted. Now everything has to go quickly. The fish now faces an operation.
Esta é a primeira vez que se está a tentar marcar um bicho desta profundidade, não é? Um cherno. Se correr bem, este cherno vai andar aí a emitir sinais com o transmissor que pusemos no interior e esses sinais vão ser apanhados pelos receptores que temos no topo do monte submarino.
The operation, in the name of science, went well. The wreckfish is returned to the bottom of the ocean in a cage that is lowered very slowly so that the fish can properly adapt to the increasing water pressure.
Okay. E, portanto, a expectativa é essa, é percebermos se a técnica funciona, em primeiro lugar. É um desafio saber se isto funciona com peixes de grande profundidade. Há muito poucos trabalhos ainda feitos com peixes de profundidade. E, em segundo lugar, saber o que é que ela nos diz, ou seja, se de facto eles residem ou não.
Ok, mestre! Alô! Mestre! Obrigado! Até já! Até já!
Até lá dentro.
The port of Horta on Fayal is a stopover for transatlantic sailors. 1,700 boats stop here each year. This boat, which belongs to a French sailing school, arrived from the Caribbean.
Quand tu remontes de la Martinique pour retourner aux Açores, tu commences par faire du nord. Donc tu remontes au nord, si tu longes beaucoup la côte, tu peux avoir le Gulf Stream qui t'aide à remonter. Nous, on n'a pas beaucoup longé la côte, donc on l'a pas trop eu. On a mis le clignotant à l'est, à 300-400 000 des Bermudes. Donc là, normalement, on était avec le courant, le Gulf Stream jusqu'aux Açores. Donc ça s'est bien passé, on espère que ça va bien se passer encore. Il nous reste encore un tiers. Enfin, voilà, c'est ça, un tiers.
A part of its waters pass the Azores. The main branch of the Gulf Stream, the so-called North Atlantic Drift, flows towards the west coast of Europe. It brings a year-round mild climate all the way up to Norway. Southwestern winds and tides carry the warmth of the Gulf Stream to the coast of Brittany. Ocean currents and the physics of the oceans are the job of Guillaume Mars. He works in the north of Brittany, near the city of Brest, at the French Research Institute for Exploitation of the Sea, Ifremer. At Ifremer, scientists and engineers are developing a new generation of so-called floats. These high-tech drifting buoys are now the most important measuring tools for the exploration of the world's oceans.
On a été voir Serge en lui demandant est-ce qu'on peut développer un flotteur qui serait capable de mesurer jusqu'à 4000 mètres de profondeur et puis du coup nous permettre d'échantillonner un signal climatique qui pénètre dans les océans, dans des couches qu'on n'était pas capable d'observer en temps réel jusqu'à présent.
The highly sensitive sensors of the buoys measure the flow rate, temperature, density, oxygen and CO2 content of depth previously inaccessible.
Étant plus jeune, moi j'avais une passion pour tout ce qui est aéronautique et spatial. Je ne suis pas allé dans cette voie-là. Par contre, les océans, c'est un peu ressemblant, dans la mesure où c'est aussi de l'espace inconnu et il faut développer des instruments pour aller les explorer.
Electricians, material researchers and computer scientists are working hand in hand. It takes years of development before a new measuring buoy is ready for deployment.
Alors, les plus grandes difficultés, effectivement, c'est de supporter la pression ambiante, qui, 4000 mètres, c'est 400 kg par centimètre carré. Et la première contrainte, effectivement, c'est ça. Ça veut dire qu'il faut des enveloppes qui soient résistantes, très résistantes. Et on veut aussi des engins, des instruments qui soient le plus légers possible. C'est bon.
Each individual component is subjected to extensive stress tests. The mother of all stress tests is this container. In it, the engineers recreate the life of a buoy.
En faisant cycler le flotteur dans un caisson de cette manière, on passe de 0 à 400 bars, on fait plusieurs cycles. On vérifie qu'il est capable de faire 150 cycles qui correspond à sa durée de vie.
Oui. Alors ici, en fait, c'est notre petit musée des horreurs. Donc on expose un peu les matériels qui ont souffert suite à nos différents essais-caissons. Et ici, par exemple, là, c'est un tube en fait des profileurs qui a subi en fait un test de qualification à la rupture pour voir sa limite maximum. C'est un tube qui était prévu pour 200 bars et qui a été monté au-delà de ses limites et qui a implosé en fait sous l'effet de la pression hydrostatique.
The new float, however, withstands the 400 bars of pressure undamaged. In a basin filled with seawater, the scientists test how the buoy will react to oceanic conditions. If everything runs smoothly, the prototype will go into serial production. Among other things, the scientists want to measure the effects of the warming of the atmosphere and the increasing greenhouse gases at a depth of 4,000 meters.
Donc il est très difficile aujourd'hui de déterminer avec précision quelle est la structure interne dans l'océan de ces anomalies climatiques. C'est pour ça qu'on a besoin d'avoir des flotteurs, comme le dit Parvor ici, capables de mesurer l'océan jusqu'au fond pour pouvoir échantillonner la structure spatio-temporelle de ces anomalies climatiques et de pouvoir les suivre et de comprendre leur impact sur l'océan dans son ensemble.
Scientists from over 30 countries investigate ocean currents in Project Argo, which is named after the mythological Greek ship. The floats descend and take measurements at different depths. Then they ascend to the surface again to send their data to a satellite. The information is accessible to scientists around the world. To date, more than 3,000 drifting buoys have been deployed. County Donegal is the northwesternmost corner of Europe and the most remote area of Ireland. In the village of Falcarrach lives Seamus O'Donnell. His grandfather struck gold in America and then returned to Donegal to buy land. As a young man, Seamus also traveled the world. He has lived in Indonesia, Costa Rica and New Zealand, and now he cultivates the land of his grandfather.
This beautiful tree fern is called Dixonia antarctica and is native to Tasmania, and it's doing very, very well out of the wind. This stunning plant is called meadow-rue, and it's actually seeding around here in the garden, which is very, very good to have. Due to the proximity to the Gulf Stream, we're blessed with the selection of plants that we can grow here in Northwest Ireland, and it's just basically plants from all corners of the planet. We might have the wind and the rain, but we don't get the snow that often.
Seamus planted thousands of elm, ash and plane trees to create a natural buffer against the sea breeze. Now, years later, he can experiment with plants that are anything but easy to grow, even in the Gulf Stream climate of Ireland.
Well, in this garden, I'm sure there are, well, definitely around 400 to 500 exotic sort of themed plants. And all the time there's new additions. Generally, I'm trying to fill up every little space. This plant is called Gunnera kilapiana, which is native to the mountains in Guatemala. So very surprisingly, here it's found a home in Donegal, but it's on trial as I'm not just sure how hardy it is. When I'm not familiar with the plant or I haven't seen it grow in a similar situation, I would, maybe if I have 3 plants, I'll leave one of them out for the winter time and see how that does, and then if that's showing potential, I just plant the whole lot outside then, and well, the chances are that they're going to survive anyway, because we do get a lot less frost. Because of the Gulf Stream, it's got the biggest influence on what we can do around this part of the world.
Seamus sells plants that can endure the weather conditions of Ireland through his nursery Seaside Gardens. Due to his encyclopedic botanical knowledge, he is also in great demand among garden professionals.
So this is one of my favourite plants. This is a ginger from the Himalaya, and I'm actually going to bring a plant up to my friend Sean up in Glenveigh Castle Gardens just to see how it'll do up in the mountains.
In the heart of the Derryveik Mountains, at Glenveigh National Park, lies Glenveigh Castle. Plants from Asia, Australia and South America grow in the garden here. It all began with a dahlia. The original castle owners had brought the seeds from the Americas.
So we have Dahlia mater armor. It's a wild species from Mexico, and they believe that the Aztecs grew this as a vegetable and ate the roots. They're not particularly tasty. We've actually tried to eat them. They're like a very poor, watery kind of potato. But we've had them, so they're unique to this particular garden, and they're iconic of this particular garden. It's a very important one for us to conserve.
Sean and Seamus share a passion for botanical experimentation.
You know, we used to have gingers in Glenveigh.
Yeah.
The Himalayan ginger thrives fabulously in Seamus's garden close to the sea. Now, the two of them want to find out how it'll do in the Upper Castle Park.
The aristocracy, you know, the people who lived in the great houses, they had the resources to collect plants from all parts of the world. This is a Victorian garden, and this was all planned out in the late Victorian period, and it was all as a showpiece. And it was also an art form, you could say, as well, where they were collecting all these beautiful exotic plants from all over the world.
Sean, of course, also has a botanical rarity for Seamus, a ginger orchid which comes originally from southwest China. Along the British Isles, the Gulf Stream flows close to the coast. Much like a natural warm water heater, it releases the warmth of the Gulf of Mexico. At the same latitude as southern Greenland lies the Scottish archipelago of Orkney. The largest of the 70 Orkney islands is called mainland. It has always been given presence by the current. In earlier centuries, the valuable cargo of wrecked ships would drift ashore. When Martin Gray walks along the bay nowadays, he no longer finds treasures. But what he finds always has a story to tell.
This little bit of plastic, this is a tag from a lobster pot that's come from Maine. That's the eastern coast of the United States, floated all the way. I find objects from the Caribbean, from South America, from all along the eastern seaboard of the United States, from all around the North Atlantic. Wash up in this beach here, thanks to the actions of the Gulf Stream North Atlantic drift. I found this here on this very beach. It's a sea heart. It's a seed of a tropical plant, and it's travelled here from the warmth of the Caribbean or maybe even South America. It's still got life inside, and I just find that mind-blowing.
Most of all, the ocean current now carries garbage across the Atlantic, and the tides bring it ashore.
Packing bands. This is just the right size for a young seal, baby seal, to get its head through, and it gets it stuck around its neck. This will not expand, but the seal does. And it grows and it cuts into its neck. These are dreadful things. I take home a lot of bottles, plastic bottles, that have floated here from America and Canada, from another continent, and they go in my recycling here in Orkney. I'm recycling another continent's garbage. It's mad.
North Ronaldsay is the northernmost island of the archipelago. Dozens of bird species nest on North Ronaldsay or take rest here while migrating. Seal colonies inhabit the coast, but they have to share it. With the North Ronaldsay sheep, an ancient breed, small, tough, and adapted to a special diet. In 1830, the islanders built a wall around the island to keep the sheep out of the cow pastures. Since then, the sheep eat the seaweed washed ashore by storms. When the full moon rises at the height of summer, it's time for the sheep to get a haircut. So the 50 residents of the island begin preparing for the so-called punding.
There's a hill over there, and we'll take Land Rovers and cars onto the hill, push them down past the pond, which is in the corner, and then we'll bring them back into that pond from that way. So, and we'll have people stationed in various places to get up and chase them, yeah.
2,500 sheep live on North Ronaldsay. There are 11 pens or ponds located along the wall of the island. "11 sheep elders oversee the ponding, the herding of the sheep. They also later make sure that the proceeds earned from the sheared wool are shared equitably. One of the oldest democratically run farming communities of Europe owes its existence to seaweed-eating sheep.
Well, they're very important to the island. In many ways, they're sort of part of the cultural definition of the island, because the North Hornsea Wall is a very important feature of the island, and the sheep are integral to that. Managing them now, the island communities declined quite considerably, and there's far fewer people keeping sheep. So we need more help now, both to maintain the dike and to help with the clipping.
The sand in the sheep's wool would destroy electric scissors, so shearing is difficult and just as rustic as the island's entire sheep culture.
The genetics of them is very interesting. They're very, very pure. There's very, very little, well, as far as we know, they are completely pure, and so they're probably the purest native North Hornsea native tilt-tailed sheep that still exist. Yes, I mean, they came with the first settlers. I mean, they're very, very old. They're millennia.
Archaeologists have discovered just how old the race is. In 1850, a flash flood on the Orkney island of mainland uncovered the best preserved Neolithic settlement in Europe, Skara Brae. Skara Brae was inhabited for 600 years sometime during the 3rd millennium before Christ. Among the ruins, archaeologists also found sheep bones, and a genetic match was established with the present-day sheep of North Ronaldsay. Not far from Skara Brae lie the boulders of the Ring of Brodgar. In the Neolithic period, an estimated 10,000 people lived on the Orkney Islands. They obviously had the time and resources to build monumental structures. This complex dates back to 3200 before Christ. Professionals and volunteers have been digging here since 2008, but so far only 1/10 of the site has been uncovered.
The Ness of Brodgar is like nothing else we've really seen before. In the whole of Atlantic Europe, there's nothing else quite like it. The Ness is over 250 metres long, 100 metres wide, covering an area of 2.5 to 3 hectares. And here we have this massive complex of very intricate buildings, unknown elsewhere.
To date, the excavations have uncovered tools, painted pottery and jewellery. Hundreds of artifacts.
Whether it was a little kind of almost mortar and pestle for maybe mixing pigments, or whether it's a small stone lamp, we don't know yet. But we'll clean it up and probably do some residue analysis and hopefully see if we can work out exactly what it was used for.
The Orkney farmers kept large herds and were the first in Europe to fertilize their fields with manure. The findings suggest an early, highly developed civilization.
Well, I think what probably enticed man to Orkney in the first place was its fertility. But also, well, the climate, it probably wasn't much different than what we see today. It was quite pleasant, kind of warmed by the Gulf Stream. But we see a change happening towards the end of the Neolithic and into the Bronze Age, where the climate seems to have deteriorated a bit. And this, no doubt, is one of the reasons why the Ness became abandoned. It was almost obliterated round about 2300 BC.
But this bone spread we have here...
Before the original inhabitants abandoned the Ness of Brodgar, they had a huge festival. Then they destroyed the buildings and covered them with debris. Even today, it is still not known why.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ancient civilizations that flourished tended to do so during warm periods. The Gulf Stream and its warmth played a significant role in the settlement history of the North Atlantic region. The main branch flows further along the coast of Northern Europe, where few people would have ever settled had it not been for its warmth. A part of the current also goes to Iceland. The ice on the southwestern coast of Iceland comes from Europe's largest glacier, the Vatnajökull glacier. His work combines a scientific interest with art. His passion is the regions of the far north. Ragnar Axelsson, called Rax by his friends, knows the Vatnajökull very well.
Alast upp hér á sumrin var stórkostlegt og hér voru systkini, 9 systkini og þau voru öll svona vísinda þenkjandi þannig að ég fekk svona í æð vísindi frá þeim og við mældum jöklana. Þetta var bara eitthvað svo stórkostlegt að fá að alast upp við þetta og hérna fekk ég áhuga á að taka myndir, ljósmyndir.
For the past 4 decades, Rax has documented the changes in the Arctic landscapes and the consequences for the people inhabiting them.
Víða hoppar jökullinn 100 metra á ári. Þannig að það mjög hraðar breytingar eiga sér stað núna. Ástæðan er hlýnun á jörðinni, bara sem að maður sér það einna best hér á Íslandi og Greenlandi hvað er að gerast. Jöklarnir eru að minnka og gæti horfið á 150-200 árum.
The ice sheets of Iceland are by far not the largest of the North Atlantic region.
Bráðni Grænlandsjökull hækka heimsöður 7 metra. Það hefur verulega áhrif og nú þegar að jöklarnir bráðna í höfin og hvaða áhrif hefur það á Golfstrauminn, mun það hægja á honum. Það er stóra spurningi sem vísindamenn velta fyrir sér og er svona áhyggjuefni. Það er ekki í lagi að segja bara oops in the end. Það verður að hugsa þetta, tala þetta, mikilvægt.
Iceland is a volcanic island, austere, but thanks to the Gulf Stream, it is not covered by permanent ice. Even in the winter, the coast remains free of ice. Karin Andersen Dahl has come to Iceland from Norway. The researcher is interested in Arctica Icelandica.
Yeah, I really love these. I think they are magnificent. They are big and they contain so much information. These are the tree rings of the sea, so to speak. I can use them for my research, but the real stuff I'm interested in is out at deeper depths in the ocean.
At Reykjavik, the capital city of Iceland, the Georg Ossiansars is docked. The Norwegian research ship is on its way to the coast of Greenland. It will be at sea for 4 weeks. On board, 20 scientists work around the clock. They measure ocean temperature and salinity and gather sediment samples. Under the leadership of the climate paleontologist Øystein Jansen, they're searching for the causes behind rapid climate changes in the past, and for the consequences, including on the Gulf Stream. A dredge is lowered to the ocean floor. This is when it gets exciting for Karin Andersen Dahl.
My aim with these are to collect these from different branches of the North Atlantic current, so that I can reconstruct the variability of each branch and compare it through time, and then use that information to decipher how climate has changed in the North Atlantic region through time.
No other animal species on the planet lives as long as the Arctica Icelandica. The oldest living specimen ever found was more than 600 years old.
Wow. Yeah, this is probably the best catch I ever had of live collected specimens. They are big, heavy, and they look like they are very old. And I don't think we need more from this location. With these shells we can look at things at very high detail. So we can see things happening within a year even. So to speak, at seasonal resolution. So we can see if the winter was cold or warm in relationship to the summer, for example.
The scientists will be going far up north, where the Gulf Stream drops deep under the sea in giant undersea waterfalls. The team wants to examine the impact of the changing climate on the current. They are approximately as high up as the Hudson Bay in Canada, which is covered by ice for months on end. The Lofoten Islands, an archipelago in northwestern Norway. On the Lofoten Islands, cod season ends in spring. The fish hang in the wind for 2 to 3 months, at which point their consistency is almost woody. The cod is now stockfish.
Man ser på fargen, kjenn på den, kapper ut et stykke her, og så lukter man. Lukta er veldig avslørende, og ut fra den finner man kvaliteten. Lofoten er den beste plass i verden for å tørske fisk. Vi har rett temperatur om vinteren, litt regn, sol, vind. Av og til har vi uvær, vi får sjøsprøyt opp, det blir litt salt i lufta, og treffer fisken. Og den får en også fin, flott farge.
Roy Arvid Dahl has fished the sea since he was a boy of 4. This is one of the last times he'll be setting out this fishing season.
Nå har fisken gått fra innersida, nå passerer den yttersida her og mot Vesterålen, og så går den i Barentshavet. Den er nå ferdig med gytinga, så det er ikke så mye fisk igjen. Men enda kan man få en 200-300 kilo om dag hvis man er heldig.
Long ago, the Atlantic Ocean was teeming with cod, in quantities unimaginable today. The Vikings followed the swarming schools across Iceland and Greenland to North America.
Det er over 1000 år siden de begynte å eksportere tørrfisk. Og i mange hundre år var det 80% av valutainntektene til Norge. Det var bare jobb for vikinger. Det var et tøft liv, vått, kaldt, dårlig boforhold. I riktig gamle dager så dro de båtene på land, snudde de opp ned og sov under de om natta.
Normally, it would take 60 days for the Gulf Stream to flow past Norway. But the rugged Norwegian coastline causes it to churn and swirl so much it needs 500 days.
Golfstrømmen har med seg næringsrikt, varmt vann,
som gjør at torsken og mange andre arter kommer til Lofoten og Vesterålen for å slippe rogna si, for å gyte. Og det gjør også at vi kan bo her. Her har vi det isfrie havnet. Vi har ikke så kaldt om vinteren, passer i temperatur om sommeren. Og alt det her kan vi takke Golfstrømmen for.
In recent years, the water around the Lofoten Island has warmed about 1 degree. As a result, the cod have begun to spawn further north. Within the past decade, the number of cod fishermen has declined to 1/10 of what it used to be. But just like champagne, the name Lofoten is now protected under the EU law as a designation of geographical origin. The small fishermen are finding ways to get by. Roy guts the fish while still on the boat. The top quality Lofoten dry cod goes almost exclusively to Italy. From the 27th of May to the 15th of July, the midnight sun shines above the Lofoten Islands. That bold souls can go swimming at the beaches here, only 200 kilometers from the Arctic Circle, is only possible thanks to the warmth of the Gulf Stream. "24,000 people live on the Lofoten Islands, most of them in the small town of Svolvær. Aside from dried fish, the main source of income is tourism. More than 1 million visitors come here every year. Agriculture, on the other hand, is decreasing. Of the former 40 goat farmers in the Lofoten Islands, for example, only 7 are left. And in the valley where Tove Arland lives, she's the last farmer. From the milk of her 250 goats, Tove produces cheese. She also grows herbs, which she uses to make special spice blends and teas that she sells on the internet.
Vi er totalt avhengige av Golfstrømmen. Hvis vi ikke hadde Golfstrømmen, vi kunne ikke ha hatt vekster her. Vi har ikke kunnet dørske noe. Vi dørsker jo blant annet korn her, og sånne litt mer varmekrevende urter, så de her kan gro her.
And they are growing better than ever before. For some people in the cold north of Norway, global warming has a positive effect.
Det er jo ikke bra for klimaet at det er bedt varmere sånn som det er nå. Det er jo ikke det. Men for meg som urtedyrker å plukke det, det er klart at jeg vil ha lengre sesong. Jeg utvider jo sesongen vår og høst, men allikevel så ser jeg jo klimaendringen med at det er mer vind og sånn. Det er jo ikke bra. Oppi lia her, når trærne har dott ned og sånn, det er jo ikke bra.
A weaker Gulf Stream means less warmth for Europe. That would counteract the increased heat caused by global warming, at least in Norway. The winter month Roy Arvid Dahl spends at sea. In summer, the fisherman becomes a gardener. His potatoes are for his own kitchen. On most of his land, however, Roy cultivates a crop that he can ask good prices for here on the Lofoten Islands. Roy works probably the northernmost strawberry field in the world. Harvest begins in late July.
God jordbær. Jo, for ca. 20 år siden så fant jeg ut jeg skulle dyrke jordbær. Jeg liker jordbær veldig godt selv, og man kan tjene litt penger på å ha jordbær. Og siden vi nå nord for polarsirkelen, vi har det ikke så veldig varmt om sommeren, bæra vokser sakte, den blir søtere, og så har vi en stor fordel med at det er lyst om natta. Og så har vi det lyset som gjør at den blir søtere enn bær man får lenger sør.
Strawberries from the Arctic Circle. Roy recently set up a new field. Next year, he hopes to harvest 2 tons. From the tropics to the Arctic Circle, the Gulf Stream travels 10,000 kilometers. Over the course of its journey, its water becomes cooler and saltier. This makes it denser and heavier and makes it sink. Per second and in white columns, 100-fold the amount of water of the Amazon River sinks to a depth of up to 4,000 meters only to flow back towards the south. This makes the Gulf Stream the pump behind the global circulation of the ocean currents. But the thermohaline circulation in the Atlantic Ocean seems to be weakening. On the Norwegian research ship Azores, the Calypso corer is being prepared. Øystein Jansen and his team want to drill for sediments on the ocean floor.
We are investigating the potential for rapid changes, which are associated with very rapid heating of Greenland and lots of fresh water being transported into the ocean by the melting.
The current climate change is the result of human activities. As the salinity of the Gulf Stream becomes more diluted, the current's drop to the ocean floor is being inhibited. The core samples also shed some light on the stability of the ocean currents in the past.
There were sudden jumps in the temperature of Greenland by 15 degrees. If such things should happen in the future, then the melting of the Greenland ice sheet and the sea level rise will accelerate dramatically. This freshwater addition will reduce the large-scale Atlantic circulation. And of course, the effect will influence the Gulf Stream system, so there will be a reduced transfer of heat from the tropics to the north.
Currents are influenced by the climate and, in turn, also influence the climate. But in what ways the existing human-induced climate change is affecting the ocean has yet to be studied in any depth.
Well, I think the ocean is still the major uncharted areas of our planet. With this project, we try to solve some of the very difficult questions in terms of how the ocean works physically. And this is an area which will be very useful for our adaptation to climate change in the future. We need to know these things, otherwise we will be sort of heading towards the future with blindfolded eyes.
Thanks to satellites, the melting of the Greenland ice sheet can almost be followed as it happens, with consequences for the Gulf Stream. Europe's heating pump could begin to falter.
The Gulf Stream is one of the key elements of the climate system of the Earth. If it slows down, then that will create climatic changes. It will change the tracks of the storms. It will be important particularly for Europe, but also all of Eurasia. But of course, if it should collapse, then we have something that would be more similar to an ice age situation. But the likelihood for that to happen, at least within the next 100 to 200 years, is not so large.